Well, thank you so much, Nosh. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you all with NAIRA for your support and the incredible work that you are doing. And I, too, want to thank my wife, Jamie, and our daughter, Allison, and son, Thatcher, for being here with me tonight. We've had a great weekend. Yesterday, we were in Douglas County together, and we were in Arapahoe County with Mike Kaufman yesterday. And last night, we were in Weld County. And so we've been all over the place this past couple of days talking about what we're going to do to get our country back in the right direction. And I always love to share stories about our kids and talk about some of the things that they have done. And one of them involves Mike Kaufman, who's with us tonight. So our daughter, that's right. Please give Mike Kaufman a round of applause. Children under the age of 11 are allowed to go onto the house floor with us, and so I would, every time I get the chance, take Allison to the floor with us to go see the debates, to participate and see what happens during a vote. And Mike is always such a great person to make sure that she goes up and says hi to, because he just, in fact, tonight he walked up to her right as the dancers were in the middle of their performance, and he says, "By the way, you're next, Allison." So he's always got something to say to her, and she walked up to him one time, and it was in the middle of a vote, and he goes, "Allison, I really don't know I don't know how to vote on this. I don't know what to do on this issue. What should I do?" And Allison's kind of looking up at him, and I said, "Well, ask him what the bill does." And Mike says, "Well, it raises spending." And he said, "What should I do?" And she says, "Well, vote no." So he votes no. And a couple weeks later, we see Mike at some event around town, and Allison sees Mike, and Mike says hi to Allison, and pretty soon she looks up at me and she says, "Daddy, there's Mike. He always needs my help." But Mike Kaufman, we're going to get you back in the United States Congress. It's great to see him here tonight, and please let's do everything we can to make sure that he is a part of that thin red line of freedom in the House majority back again, once again in November of 2014, growing to be more than just that. But I too want to say thank the sheriffs here personally. Unfortunately, I know one professionally. Ken, don't say anything. I think my speedometer was wrong, Sheriff Putnam. I'm not sure what happened. I'm pretty sure I was going below the speed limit. I'm almost positive of that, right? But no, it's great to see so many sheriffs here. And I think, when your lives are going well and you have peace in your community, and we in the United States are so blessed that we have peace, that we live in communities that are safe, that we live in a country that is safe. And oftentimes we take for granted the incredible sacrifice that our sheriffs do for us each and every day. The fact that when they respond to that car accident down the road, they probably knew who was involved. They know the families, they know the history. The fact that when you're standing with Sheriff Smith at a press conference that he's about ready to give, announcing the latest details of a forest fire that's burned down his neighbors' homes and people he's known his whole life. He's got people on the force that are working with him who lose their homes, and he's standing on the front lines. Tireless, hasn't slept for who knows how long. I think when I saw you, it was like 48 hours or something you hadn't slept, and you were there to tell people. And I remember standing by him, and there were people coming up to him going, "Sheriff, have you seen the house that was right as you come into the road, and it was the house by the red barn, and is it still there?" And to know that he's getting that question over and over again, and the people that he's dealing with, and he did a marvelous job then, you continue to do a marvelous job now. And to those of you in law enforcement, thank you from all of us for the incredible work that you do, and for standing up to this governor and this legislature, not letting them take our rights, making sure that we keep our rights, making sure that our Constitution is adhered to. How many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you have ever been to India? I hope that you can all someday have the chance to do it. It was 2007 when I traveled to India. It was an amazing experience. I had the great honor of being there with an organization called the American Council of Young Political Leaders. And so for those of you who are familiar with that organization, they do basically intergovernmental exchanges. And I encourage you to get involved with the ACYPL, because some great organizations in Colorado are part of it, like El Pomar Foundation and some other people in the room that know that organization very well. And so we met with leaders in India. India it's the world's largest democracy. The United States is the world's oldest democracy, but India is the largest democracy. And so the exchanges that we have between each other, it's pretty incredible to see the opportunity to meet with government leaders to talk about business issues and how the people of India are so excited to be a part of our country, to find out how we have more trade opportunities, what we can do together. And I'll never forget when I was we were in New Delhi and then we traveled to Jaipur. And in Jaipur, the escort that was with us said, you really need to go to an Indian wedding. You need to experience an Indian wedding, to see it, to be a part of it, because it's not just in the United States, it's a 1 hour, if you're unfortunate, half an hour if you're lucky, experience at the church, and then you go home and everybody's happy. But this is a multi-day, sometimes days-long occurrence in India, celebration. And so we decided we would go. But our escort said, it's really important if you go that you try to do something to show that you appreciate the culture. And so we encourage you to show up in cultural attire. So a state senator and I from Oregon decided, well, we can do that. We went to a market and we found a kurta that we thought was appropriate to wear for this Indian wedding. And so we put it on, and he's wearing his, I'm wearing mine. We walk into this Indian wedding. It is like the record stopped when we walked in, because we were the only two guys wearing a kurta. Everybody else is wearing a suit and tie, and they're all looking at us like, who are these guys? I think it was just one big cruel joke our escort was playing on us. But anyway, I still have it at home. I didn't wear it tonight, so that's once is enough. But I do want to thank all of you for the chance to be here tonight to talk about the commonality of our search for greater strength in our democracy. It was in 2011, January, when I was sworn into the House of Representatives. And one of the first things that we did as that class of 2010 was elected in November is we had a freshman dinner in Statuary Hall. And I don't know how many of you have been to the U.S. Capitol. I'm sure most of you have. And Statuary Hall is that incredible ornate room with the marble columns and the statues that surround the chamber with the bunting around it. It served as the House of Representatives many, many years ago. Witnessed some incredible debates, but it's also the place that on the floor is marked by little plaques that say where this president sat and President Lincoln sat, President John Quincy Adams sat. It's the whisper chamber. And I'll never forget, as we had that dinner with the new members of Congress and our spouses, and the chaplain of the House got up and he was talking about what it means to be in Congress. And he said, please bow your heads and join me in prayer as we, 200 years later, continue to search for a more perfect union. And when you hear those words, you think about what we are all a part of. As voters, as activists, as candidates, as elected officials, that we realize our nation is not yet perfect, but we know that it's the greatest thing ever on the face of this earth. That we have been blessed with an opportunity that truly is exceptional. And part of that exceptionalism of this country was recognized hundreds of years ago when the first people came to this country from the outside, who wanted to see what it was like to be a part of the United States, who wanted to see how on earth could this young group of upstarts, farmers and planters, how on earth did they conquer the greatest superpower on the face of this nation? How did they defeat the English army? What makes them so special? How have they turned their economy, their machines of manufacturing? How have they done it? And people like de Tocqueville came to the United States and they looked at it and they said this: the passion to rise swells in every American heart. Think about those words. The passion to rise. The idea to rise. The idea to run. And there ends the evening. But the idea to rise, the passion to rise in every person's heart, that idea that we all want to be better, that in the United States we believe that there is something greater to accomplish, that we're not just satisfied with second best, that we're not just satisfied with what we're doing today, because we believe in the incredibility of tomorrow. That tomorrow presents a greater chance and opportunity. And that our better days are always ahead of us. And that's the American ideal. The American spirit that lives within each and every one of us. That idea to rise. And what we've seen over the past several years, what we've seen in this country over the past several decades is sort of saying, no, that's not who we are anymore. That we are no longer a nation to rise. We have become a nation of what government can do for us. That it is a nation of government that is responsible for everything that we have. And over the past 4 years of this presidency, we have seen that mentality grow. We have seen that idea of what it's like to rise as an American be put aside and instead say, we're going to create an opportunity for you, but it's an opportunity for you to count on us. Not we, the individual, but they, the government. To count on a government program, to count on an entitlement, to count on an initiative that we will create to make sure that you're better off. A promise that the government has made. But we've seen what happens. $17 trillion in debt later. We've seen what happens, and more people become hooked, obligated, a part of growing government. That we've taken away that notion to rise, that power to rise, that thought to rise. And it's happened bit by bit, bill by bill, until finally in the year of 2013, what I believe to be one of the greatest threats this nation has ever faced is now upon us. And that's a president who believes that the separation of powers of our government no longer matters. That there are no longer three separate but equal branches of government. That we have one White House that can decide it all. That we no longer care about legislative power or executive power, because executive power is the only way forward. The danger of this isn't just because we have a president like Barack Obama, just because we have a Democrat in power. But the danger is because when a precedent is set and we fail to stop it, then who comes next? Who is the next president, regardless of party, regardless of whether it's a Democrat or a Republican to come next? All of a sudden, that separation of powers no longer matters. And it's that one president who can make the law, enforce the law, execute the law. And in our Constitution, it says the president indeed shall execute the law. But that means that he carries out the law, not kills the laws that he doesn't want to enforce. And so to me, a nation that faces so many great challenges, one of the greatest upon us, is a president who has decided that he is on his own and that he can do it on his own. A couple of months ago, I sent a letter to President Obama, and I identified two key things that have happened over the past several years, and I asked him what gives him the authority, the power, the belief to carry out this effort. One dealt with the marijuana situation here in Colorado. The other dealt with Obamacare. The state of Oklahoma passed a resolution voted on by its people that actually said, Obamacare doesn't apply in Oklahoma. They said, no way, no how, not in our state. In Colorado, a bill was passed to legalize the use of marijuana, certain conditions. Now, in one instance, the president has said, Oklahoma, you can't do that. The law is the law. And in the other instance, the president has said, Colorado, we're going to ignore the law. What gives this president the power to pick and choose and decide what he can and what he cannot do, regardless of where you stand on the issue, regardless of how you voted on the initiative? How can this president pick and choose what to enforce and what not to enforce? When it comes to lawmaking, issuing of decrees and executive orders, we've seen what happens. A couple of months ago, the president was before our Republican conference, and we got a chance to ask him questions to talk about what was happening. This is about 2 or 3 months ago. And the president, in front of 232 members of the Republican conference, stood up, and it was Candace Miller from the state of Michigan, stood up and said, Mr. President, we've managed under our sequester cuts to actually continue with our tours of the Capitol. If you come and visit the Capitol, we still provide tours, but you've cut the White House tours. Why is that? Well, the first thing that the president said was, well, it's actually not my fault. It's the Secret Service's fault. So he blamed the Secret Service first. But the second thing he said was actually, well, Michelle and I really like the White House tours because sometimes we go down to the first floor and let the people see us. A couple of weeks ago, you saw the president when he was interrupted giving a speech on Guantanamo Bay, I believe it was. And he was interrupted, and he said, as the protester was trying to interrupt the speech, he said, listen, part of free speech is you listening to me. Part of free speech is you listening to me. 2014 presents us with an incredible opportunity. Some of them are in this room right now. We have got to send people to the United States Senate to check the power of this president. We have 1/2 of 1/3 of one branch of government, and we have got to do more. We've got to get the United States Senate back. There are people in this room who can do that now. In 2014, we need to take the governor's seat back. We need to make sure that we have a governor who is willing to veto bills that infringe upon our rights, who's willing to make decisions. And I mean that. If the governor of Colorado was invited to join us tonight, he probably couldn't decide if he wanted to come. But we know there are people in this room that are running for office to take the governor's seat back, to give us that seat back and that opportunity. And the state Senate, we have to win. But at the federal level, what are we going to do to get things back on track? How are we going to do it? I think there's 3 key things, and it pretty much leads back into one overall picture. Number one, we've got to get control of regulations. What are we doing in this country to address the regulatory attack that our small business and business owners are under right now? This room is filled with small businesses. People who own small businesses, people who work in small businesses, people who know that sometimes they're not going to get paid unless their employees all get paid. They're going to have to wait a little bit after that to see if they can make ends meet, if they can cover their bills. And then maybe they'll be able to take a little bit home. So how do we check the regulation and the regulatory overreach that's occurring right now with this administration? One of my favorite examples to talk about in terms of regulatory overreach is a Colorado company that is tasked with doing environmental remediation. They clean up environmental sites and do it in a way so that land can be reclaimed, redeveloped. So one of these EPA regulations says that if you're dealing with asbestos, then when you transport it, it has to be a dry storage when you transport it. But when you're in situ storage of this asbestos, it has to be kept wet. So this particular company was trying to transport the asbestos, so what do you do if it has to be wet when it's stored and dry when it's moved? Well, you have to dry it, right? So they were preparing to move it. They were letting it dry down, and when they got the inspection, the EPA inspector finds them and issues a notice of violation because it wasn't wet enough. The company's response, well, what? If we moved it when it was wet, we'd violate the regulation. If we moved it and it wasn't dry, we'd violate the regulation. That's the catch-22 our government presents. There's a bill called the RAINS Act that we have before us. The state legislators in this room understand what that is. Every year when a regulation gets issued by a state agency, the state legislature actually gets to vote up or down on that rule or regulation. They get to say yes or no to it. Doesn't that make a heck of a lot of sense if we could do the same thing at the federal level? When a regulation has a certain impact on the economy, the Congress gets to say yes or no to that regulation? That's the RAINS Act. That's how we can check regulations. The regulatory cost to every single employee in this country exceeds $12,000. When you start a business, if you have a business, every employee, the regulatory cost is $12,000 before you can even get off the ground. The second thing we have an incredible opportunity to do in this nation is energy and energy development. India right now is the 4th largest energy consumer in the entire world. They're the 6th largest importer of LNG. Now think about what's happening just 40 or so miles away from here to the northeast. In Weld County, Colorado, the heart of the NAIRA shale play, 80% of the state's oil is being produced right now in Weld County. Companies like Anadarko, Noble Energy are investing billions of dollars into that county, creating jobs and opportunity. But it's doing more than that. It's actually changing the geopolitical conditions around the world. It's having an impact on the nation of Iran's ability to fund its government and who then turns around and uses that money to fund terrorist activities against the United States. We have an opportunity to export LNG from this country, to revitalize manufacturing in this nation. And we can do it in our own backyards, making sure we're producing that energy right here in Colorado, instead of relying on nations overseas who'd rather do us great harm. But we've got to be careful of that too, because that is under threat. There are over a dozen agencies at the federal level right now who are trying to, in some way, shape, or form, regulate hydraulic fracturing. Believe it or not, who are they? Well, you know who they are. They're the EPA, the BLM. But the Department of Agriculture, they're in on it. The Securities and Exchange Commission, they're in on it. The FDIC, they're in on it. How are they? If you have a rural loan guarantee, Department of Agriculture may require you to do an environmental assessment if you have energy development on your property. If you're the SEC, you're going to require certain disclosures of a registered company. If you're the FDIC, we're hearing that if property is turned over to the federal government, to the FDIC, they may strip off and hold back the mineral rights when they turn around and sell that property back. Now, if you're an administration that's opposed to energy development, why do you think that is? They don't want that developed. They'll keep it and not return it. We have an incredible opportunity with energy to get this nation back on its feet to grow our economy. The third thing that we have to do as a nation is comprehensive tax reform. We have a tax code right now that there are more lawyers, accountants, IRS agents than, well, the IRS code's longer than the Bible. And the Bible actually has good things in it. We need to reform the tax code. How'd you like to be able to turn your taxes in on an index card, mail it back and say, hey, this is what I made, this is what I owe? You don't need to know what I'm talking about in my prayers, and you sure as heck don't need to know what books I'm reading, IRS. Thank you very much. If we reform the tax code, we can grow the economy, using it as a pro-growth tax policies to grow our economy, to create jobs, to let businesses and individuals keep more money in their own pockets so they can turn around and invest and grow this country. Look, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. On April 1st of last year, we were number 2. Japan then changed theirs. We became number 1. Not something we should be proud of. If you're doing business in this country overseas and you're making money in Poland or Ireland or anywhere else, if you want to bring that money back into the United States, you're going to get hit with about a 35% repatriation fee. For every $1 you try to bring into the United States, you can bring about 65 cents back. Now tell me, who's going to do that? We live in a world economy where we want to encourage people to go out and use American ingenuity, American know-how, American entrepreneurs to create wealth around the world. But then we penalize them when they do it. Comprehensive tax reform will make sure that we can grow our economy, get it back on track. But it all comes down to a 30,000-foot picture of tax reform is important, energy growth and development, huge, regulatory reform, a necessity, but none of it matters if we don't get a control of our debt and deficit. What happens if you have a nation that continues to grow debts and deficits where more of our GDP is consumed by financing of the federal government? It takes more and more money to compete. It takes more and more money out of the private sector to compete with the federal sector because the federal government's taking more money to finance its spending. It takes more money to spend and pay for the interest rates that will have to rise because of the overspending, the continued borrowing. You know, and I don't know, Tom, I don't know if you've ever been there or not. Mike, have you ever been to that little room in Washington, D.C. where they auction off our federal debt? It's a little tiny room. It's very nondescript, a little room in Washington where we sell obligations of the United States and we raise the money for our country that we need because of our overspending. What happens the day that no buyers show up in that room? What happens the day that no one raises their hand? 1% interest rate means, increase in interest rates mean $1 trillion added to our debt almost overnight. It's unsustainable, and we have to stop it. We also know that we're not going to win, though, continuing to do what we did at elections the way we did in 2012. How many of you know Arthur Brooks at AEI, the American Enterprise Institute? I encourage you to look at some of the work that he's doing because he talks about what happened to us in 2012. He talks about how we as Republicans, as conservatives, can make sure that our message resonates with the American people. There are some out there who are paid consultants and pollsters who would say, you know what, you need to change your positions. You need to change your philosophies. You need to change what you believe in order to win. We don't need to do that. We shouldn't do that. We cannot do that. But what we have to do is make sure that we deliver that message in a way that appeals to the American people. And Arthur Brooks, through his work, has identified about 5 basic values that the American people share. Things like appeal to higher authority and morality, a sense of duty to our country, a sense of purity. But those values are only shared by about 30% of our country. 2% of the two values, though, are shared by 100% of the American people. And those are the values of fairness and the values of watching out for the most vulnerable amongst us. And so when we talk about trying to get our message across, when we talk about important values, when we talk about why it's important to have a low tax rate, why it's important to balance the budget, why it's important to grow the economy, we have to deliver it through the lens of those two messages. Through the idea of being fair and watching out for the least amongst us. So let me give you an example of this. Education. Education, and it's happening right here in Douglas County. By the way, this room, this hotel, is now in the 4th Congressional District. I don't know if anybody knew that, but Yuma, Colorado and Lone Tree, Colorado in the same congressional district. It's great to be here. To the fact that you have a district that's bigger than the state of South Carolina, it's pretty amazing. But the values that we share on education make perfect sense to talk about fairness and watching out for the underdog. Is it fair that we have a system, a school system, an education system that is allowing inner city schools to fail? Is it fair that a child who wants a better education, who knows he deserves a better education, is trapped in a failing school system? That's why we believe in ideas to give freedom to parents to choose where to go to school, to pursue their dreams for their kids, to give them the choice. Because we know you shouldn't be trapped in a failing system. That's what fairness is. That's what trying to protect the most vulnerable amongst us, to give them a chance and opportunity. And we're right on that. And when we talk about our values and our ideas through those two lenses, the 100% values, we will win elections. And we will win in 2014. We've got a great opportunity to take back the United States Senate. We've got races around the country that we should win, thanks to retirements, thanks to other factors that are going to lead to opportunities in Montana, in South Dakota. We've got a great chance right here in Colorado to take out Mark Udall and elect a Republican conservative in that seat. And we can change the balance of power. In the House of Representatives, I serve as the vice chair of the Patriot Program, trying to make sure that we're sending people like Mike Kaufman back to Congress to get reelected. I believe that we can actually pick up seats, that we can gain seats in the United States Congress. We lost some seats in 2012 that we should be able to pick back up, and to add to our majority. And so things look good at the federal level in the House, but we've got to keep fighting. Mike Kaufman needs all the support that he can get because he's in a fight for his life. Nancy Pelosi, has she been here yet, or she's been here? This week she's coming. So they're rolling out everything they can to try to take that seat back, the 6th Congressional District. And we've got to help Mike and others like him so that we can maintain that majority. Let's win the House. Let's win the Senate here in Colorado. You know, we've talked quite a bit tonight about elections. We've talked a lot about the direction of the country, about some of the issues that we need to address. There's one final thought I want to leave you with, and then, Nosh, I don't know if I'm supposed to take questions or you want me to or not, but late at night when you go tour the monuments in Washington and you walk down that mall and it's dark, it's hot and humid in the summer, and if you're there late enough, a lot of the tourists have gone and the buses have packed up and no longer around, and you have a little bit of time to be on your own, to go through those monuments and the solitude and respect. And I walked one night late by the Vietnam Wall. And it was just about the same time the mist starts to come in Washington, D.C. And as I approached the wall, you kind of see how the wall gets taller and taller with the names of so many of our great heroes, brothers and sisters who gave their lives, the cause for freedom for this country. And that black marble, that wall, reflects the light that shines upon it from the sidewalk. And as you approach the center, the wall is it's not too hard to do for me, but it's way over our heads. 10 feet tall, with names of people who gave their lives. And right there at the center point, you can see the reflection of the Washington Memorial and the reflection of the Lincoln Memorial shining back in that wall. And you pause to think, what is it that our founding fathers would think about our country today. As those great monuments dedicated to great leaders in our nation shines upon the faces of those, the names who gave their lives for our country, what would they think about this country today? What has it become? But I have great faith knowing that people in this room are dedicated to rising up, and to making sure that each of us know that tomorrow always brings a better day. So NAIRA, thank you so much. God bless you. And let's get it done in 2014. Thank you.
Congressman Gardner.